Well, I have Kay Johnson on here too. Can you hear us, Kay?
Okay.
I can see
Oh,
Laura's
okay.
picture.
This is
Yeah.
Laura Bouma. Laura, this is Kay
Hi.
Johnson.
Hi, Kay.
Hi.
Hope everything's okay on your side, Laura.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Well, yeah. So, as best as it can be.
Okay. Well, Laura comes from a clinical background, Kay.
Mhm.
She has a lot of experience with the corruption that goes on with family courts there in D.C., Maryland. And Laura, we were just talking about the parental alienation. We were talking about the
Yes,
MMPI and a few other
yes.
things. We talked briefly about her blog, her website, and we're kind of going between the parent alienation and the physical and mental abuse when it comes to the
Okay.
children's and how parents can be narcissists to the
Yes,
point of where their whole deal is to destroy the reputation of the other parent, or they do whatever they can to make themselves look higher or more superior and the best fit parent, at the same time taking their kids away and making it almost literally impossible for the other parent to see, but using the shield of the courts to use them as a weapon to make sure they get what they want.
right,
In a nutshell.
right,
Yeah, and that
right.
is it. I mean, their ultimate goal is to erase the other parent from the child's life, and they're really delusional. They reached a point where with so much anxiety, it triggered, and this is my take on it. When it triggered, and I I lived it, so I saw it. When they triggered that persecutory delusion, and they started reenacting their childhood trauma, that's when the parent alienation tactics start. That's when they start to that's the point at which they have their own mental model of what relationships are, and it's one of abusive parent and protective parent and a victimized child, and they look over at you and you're the abusive parent, and they'll never see
Right,
you in another way. You are the target, which is why we're called the National Alliance for Targeted Parents.
right, right. Well, are you from Wisconsin, Kay, or
I am.
no? Oh, okay, okay. Um, I was the only reason I was asking is because I mentioned this to Ray earlier, but tonight they're having our delegate and senator in our district is holding a public meeting for our family court corruption.
Wow, in
So
DC?
yeah, well, in Maryland, Howard
Oh,
County, where my case is being held. So you sign up and you each get 3 minutes to talk, and you have the right to discuss a bill that's already been presented or a bill that you want to be presented.
mhm.
So that's the reason I was asking in case you were in this area, because I just would like as many people to come as possible.
And I apologize for
So,
not being there for you, Laura.
yeah, Ray, should have taken a plane and been here.
Yeah, true.
And what are you going to talk about, Laura? When what are you proposing something or supporting something or
Well, my entire thing with all of this crap is that children don't have voices at all. And my son is 12, and he has reported to everybody, even the judges. He's spoken with them. This has been going on for 4 years, and he spoke with them at age 8. He's 12 now. At age 12, he's gone to CPS. He's talked to therapists, police officers, everybody, and saying he's being abused, and nobody's listening to him. And when these children make choice, when they say, "Oh, I want to be with a certain parent," they should have that right to be with that parent. And usually it's the parent that's the supportive parent, but by that time the court's already deemed them to be inappropriate, so they make up some excuse for the child not to go
well, we're
with
on
that parent.
really, really different ends of this spectrum. Really different ends.
Really?
This is not what I experience at all across the country. Just the opposite. In fact, we because the kids are what happens with psychological abuse, and when the narcissist borderline parent who is abusive, when they decide that the other parent has to get out of their lives because they're whack or whatever, and they triangulate and enmesh the child, and they empower them to have a voice, but but it's well known because of the power strength issues that children do enmesh with abusers because they're afraid of them. I mean, my kids were deathly afraid of them, and they
Right.
told me I have to lie in court because otherwise they'll put dad in jail. And but
Right.
they're but what they say, you know, when they reject a parent, see now I lost my kids
Yeah,
because
me too.
they said I was abusive.
Right.
And there was no evidence of any of that. So their voice was not their voice, but their father's voice.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And if you have, I mean, I worked with children for 25 years, and I tested children, and I worked with adults. The children I worked with the most. And if you have a true professional that knows what they're talking about and takes a child and develops a relationship, they're going to end up telling the truth at some point. You can see when a child is fearful and is talking on behalf of the other parent. And see, parental alienation isn't being accepted by everybody.
No,
There's
and
a big
I don't accept
controversy
it.
over that.
I won't use the word. I simply won't. I
know they hold that against you too. I learned the hard
I've
way.
been escorted out of. I've gone to, because I'm a domestic violence survivor, and I've gone to, I've gone into support groups, and I have mentioned that word, and I've been escorted out, and I understand it. I totally get it. I've studied the whole dynamics, and I don't want this issue of children being. And we're talking about psychological abuse. There are obviously narcissistic borderline parents sexually and physically abuse their kids, but the cases that I work with, that's usually not an issue. It's pure psychological abuse.
Exactly, which is worse.
And they do, but they're very confident, and they're very calm, and they have a fit. Judges will not, they won't. Well, they're not going to change custody, but you don't even have to change custody if you could just get protective separation. Our issue is that this is not a custody issue when a child rejects a parent. That this is, I mean, when it's this serious, it's a child protection issue. But somebody's got to figure out who you got to protect the child against, because the child will say it's that parent, and it's really the one they're enmeshed with.
Are we missing out a key factor here? What about the guardian ad litems that are supposed to speak for the best interest of the children?
Well, that's a joke, which you know, Ray, too, because mine was court appointed, and she worked with my ex's attorney, and just totally devastated, my son by, saying, oh, I'm going to fight for you, and then she goes into court and says, I have a mental illness. And there was nothing, again, like Kate, like you were saying, I mean, they'll always go, okay, she was mad, she was angry because I filed a grievance against her. And she told me, oh, okay, basically, now you're going to, now watch what I can do.
Oh, God, yeah. I had the same thing. My
guardian
wouldn't investigate the domestic violence, wouldn't take, I'm the binder queen. I have documents of everything. I handed him the documentation of years of, alienation and abuse, and he said, oh, I won't be needing that. But it didn't matter.
Exactly.
The first hearing we had, and I hadn't seen my kids for 4 months. Oh, well, I 50-50 placement, but I haven't seen them. And, obviously I went to court because they were starting to say they didn't want to have anything to do with me, and I was devastated. But the first day in court, the GAL presented his recommendations, and there were so many errors. He didn't even know the right motion. I mean, I had motioned for full custody. He said, Kay's asking for enforcement of 50-50, and this is all in written documents, and blah, 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 and this is going to work. And I said to the judges, I said, this isn't my motion. This is not what I want to happen. How do you change this? And she just went literally arms waving in the air. None of that matters because it's all your fault. First day. So and emotions don't play a part in the courtroom.
Well, I think a lot of these GALs, if you want to call them that, I don't think they have a clinical background or dealing with children. Just because you have a state
Mm-mm.
bar in your area or your
No, they get
state.
stuck with being the GAL, and I'll blog. I'll put that blog up on my Wacko files. I have Wacko files of really weird stuff that happens, and this one's called the GAL. You get what you pay for, and it's a little test on whether they're stupid or biased, and
Well, my
literally every
JAL,
it goes
as
down to everything that
my personal
happens.
experience with my JAL is that if I didn't conform, that he's going to hire his good friend, a psychological evaluator, and I'm not going to like the results.
Yeah, stupid and biased doesn't even really hit the bar, does it?
Mm.
It's more
Mm-mm.
corrupt than that, and they don't like
Yeah.
it, and they don't like it because they're getting paid less, literally. And we heard that. Oh, your family isn't worth blah blah blah. I mean, he terminated us because it was too much
Exactly.
work for him to cut and paste the wrong thing into documents over and over again. Brilliant, brilliant.
Well, when honestly, if somebody took your children and spoke to them and it was a real professional, you would be able to tell if they were being coerced by the other parent. And so they would be able, if they trusted somebody, you would be able to
What
kind
does
of
it take to get that
speak to
trust,
them.
though? Because they are deathly afraid and completely loyal. I mean, we went to tons of different people, and actually we had some really wonderful therapists, and because of the suppressed attachment, if they can't feel their affection for you because they've suppressed that attachment. There's no
How old are they?
Now they're 19 and 21. At the time, they were 9 and 11. Well,
And
my
even
daughter
now
was
they don't
alienated
talk to
since
you?
what's right. And my daughter was actually alienated from birth because I was the working parent and my ex was stayed home. She never would let me brush her hair, take her to anything. I have no daughter. To this day, she can't be in the same room as me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and my son was he went from being, he was doing 11th grade work in 5th grade. Dad took him in 6th grade, and he was a genius. I mean, the kid was an outstanding, a stellar athlete. Middle school, when I didn't see him, even the teacher said something terrible's happened. He's done a 180-degree switch. He became angry and aggressive and failed school and started doing drugs and became got a police records a mile long. One social worker said, this kid is going to pull a gun and start shooting. Is this what he said to my ex-husband?
Yeah.
Because of what you're doing, what you've done to him. And my ex-husband just shrugged his shoulders and says, well, we all got to be accountable for our own actions. And then as soon as he turned 18, I had no more rights. I mean, we were in criminal court, got it, but and they sentenced Max to jail because he had, as the judge put it, screwed up my kids.
Yeah.
But that doesn't as long as he's in the picture, my kids cannot recover. As long as they're afraid that they're, and that what we found with the 4 reunification courses of programs that are out there, and with 20 years of study, that a child can recover if they feel safe enough that they can they can let their attachment to that parent come back to the surface. But and so you have to have protective separation, and it doesn't take very long. I mean, it's like 6 or 8 weeks, and then you can train them. Once they understand, and you can't go back and blame them ever. But if you can train them to be careful and to not be manipulated, and then you can actually reintroduce them to the narcissistic borderline parent, and they can have 2 relationships. They just have to understand what boundaries are.
Yeah.
So that's but my son went to and daughter. I mean, they could talk to you for a million years, and they'll never blame their dad. No.
Did your
Well, yeah,
children
that's a
go through
long.
any kind of counseling, or were they put on any kind of medications while they were going through this experience?
Yeah, but I mean, certainly we were court ordered to be in counseling 12 times. But my ex sabotaged every one. I mean, the one guy I could get him to a few times, he would just sit there because his dad would say, "No, just go in there and sit there. Don't say anything. Don't mention anything. Don't even open your mouth." And we went, I don't know how many times that I actually got him there, but for the most part, he wouldn't bring them. And it doesn't matter if they're going back. It doesn't matter if they learned anything in that day or with that counseling session. They go back and live with the narcissist who tells them
Right.
it's bullshit and it's tamper
Yeah.
resistant. This person is trying to take you away from me. So you have to fight them.
Yeah. Right.
And that's, you know, and I see, and this is what I see over and over again, and that children, you know, they have severely psychologically abused kids. They always show up with the same three clinical indicators. They have a profoundly suppressed attachment to one parent, and on the other hand, they are hyper bonded or enmeshed with the other parent, which everybody sees that as like a nice relationship. They are delusional because they picked up the delusional threat that the perpetrator puts in their head that the other parent is dangerous. I mean, it was just the weirdest thing. My son's 6'2", national rugby player. He could take apart anybody. And he would cower on the steps and say, "I'm afraid of you," and call the police.
Wow.
And the police would come and I'd be standing there and they'd go, what's the problem? "I'm afraid of her." Talking or having, you know, with my son or arguing or whatever, my ex would come blasting in from nowhere and go, Scotty, are you all right?" I'm going, "All right." See, because that's the delusion, is that I'm dangerous, that I'm abusive. And they use the words abusive more than the average bear.
Sure.
It's just and then so they have this delusion that I'm dangerous or abusive and I'm bad, and they have a right to treat me any way they want. And the third clinical indicator is that they mirror the narcissistic and borderline traits. Now I was so grateful to find out that they were mirroring these traits, because I thought my son was going to be the worst narcissist in the world. I just thought, oh God, here it goes again. And that more than anything. But actually, it really is just a mirror. I mean, kids do what they see. And so they saw, all of a sudden, my son became entitled and had this arrogant, he was above the court. He was above everybody. He was certainly above me. He could tell me what to do. And everything was black and white. No critical thinking. Couldn't think his way out of a paper bag. And it's a brilliant son.
Yeah.
So those are the three. If those three diagnostic indicators, if you see that in your kids, there is no other condition other than severe child psychological abuse, according to the DSM and all state statutes. But that's exactly what it is. Now, you can have all kinds of other associated symptoms. There's a list of 12 of them, but you don't even need that. When you see a child so disrupted from anything normal, kids don't just start hating a parent they're attached to.